I'm Isabel, and this is From Mud. Like a lotus flower floating effortlessly on the surface in all its beautiful glory, it is a symbol of resilience. Because that same gorgeous flower grew from the icky, sticky muck and mud just below the surface. Something beautiful grows from something dark and cold and unyielding. It grows from mud. This channel is all about resilience and wellness in the face of life's challenges. Thanks for joining. Hola, it's Isabel, and welcome back to From Mud. I am a Master Certified Health Education Specialist, Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist, Certified Fitness Trainer. My bachelor's degree is in Health Science, Disease Prevention, and Health Promotion. And I have been in the health and wellness field doing health coaching and various types of health education or community outreach programs for the past 13 years. I wanted to start this channel after my husband, Justin, passed away from a very rare and aggressive kidney cancer in July of 2024. He battled for 2 years, so he was diagnosed in June of 2022. And July 2024, in fact, July 18th of 2024 is when I started my new chapter as a widow mom of toddlers. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I just felt called to share our story and to kind of combine that with any insights I can share that might be helpful or at least interesting from a health and wellness standpoint, particularly talking about staying well when life gets hard. So thank you for tuning in. Today I want to continue my first series, which is the story of Justin's cancer journey, our family cancer journey. Last episode, I shared about how Justin came to find out his diagnosis and how that first year went. I will just say I definitely didn't go through the full first year, and I left out a good amount of detail. When I went back to listen, I was like, I want to kind of circle back and go over a few other things. So I know I promised this episode would be about year 2, but I'm going to take a bit of a detour and share some additional details that most people who aren't directly in a household with somebody going through this or talking to them or just very, very closely alongside somebody or someone who's going through these types of things, cancer, or they have ongoing chronic immune or other major conditions that progressively get worse over time. If you're not right there in the trenches with someone, you probably don't know about all the battles they're fighting on a daily basis and what that really looks like. And even the people right next to them, like me being right next to Justin, I still couldn't fully understand everything he's going through, of course, because he's in his body, I'm in my body, we're all in our separate bodies, so you can only empathize and try to understand as much as you can, but you'll never have that lived experience. No one will have anyone else's lived experience. We only have our own, and we can only do our best to understand and listen and feel what that might feel like. So I want to share a bit more of those details, and I kind of want to circle back and take us to a time before cancer and share a little bit about the question that I think a lot of people probably have when I mention Justin's diagnosis, which is, were there any signs before that? Could we have caught it earlier? So I really want to dive into talking about all of that, as well as kind of just my theories that I've developed, which may or may not be accurate. So I'm going to take you through that. But first, just a couple small things I mentioned in the last episode that I wanted to circle back to real quick. I mentioned in that last episode that I wasn't sure if kidney cancer could be identified through a PET scan, and I did go back and look it up, and the answer is yes, it can. However, it seems like that is not the preferred way to identify it. It was something about like the way that kidneys function, that they can alter the results of the PET scan. I don't know if it has to do with the content of them, as they filter a lot of waste and a lot of byproducts that we ingest. And maybe because of that, it kind of throws off the scan. So it seemed like it can identify through a PET scan, but it's not the preferred diagnosing scan. And it's not the typical way that people find the kidney cancer. Again, the typical way, I did confirm, is through like a CT scan. And it usually is because somebody is doing something else, the CT scan for something else in that trunk area, and it just happens to pop up on the scan. Definitely the CT scans with contrast, MRI scans, those were the main ways that we were able to see the status of Justin's cancer load. So that was the one thing. The other thing I wanted to just correct myself was that when we were in the hospital and the specialist was there talking about the tumor that Justin had, the mass that Justin had on his kidney, it was a urologist. It was not an endocrinologist or a nephrologist. I know that's such a minor thing and who cares, but I did just want to correct myself. It was a urologist who was consulting with us regarding that primary tumor that was on his kidney. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but when we were meeting with the first, before we ended up at Mayo, that first oncologist, he told us about the primary tumor. He told us about the mass of all the lymph embedded in the abdominal cavity. And what I didn't mention was that not only was it embedded in that back wall of his abdominal cavity, it was actually that lymph load, that all of that stuff that was there, it was wrapped around his vena cava, which goes vertically through, basically right next to your spine, through your heart. So it was extra inoperable because they could not mess with that vena cava. They were not able to cut anything out there. So that was the other thing. Oh, and he also had some additional masses on his spine, and that's what led to him getting that spinal surgery later. So that all did come up at the initial oncologist meeting. Okay, now that we're past that, I have corrected myself and followed up. I want to get going with this episode. So I am going to just backtrack a little bit. Like I said, I know a lot of people probably hear this story and it's terrifying because it probably feels like if that can happen to someone young and healthy and long living genes and no signs, and all of a sudden, boom, you get this and you're stage 4. I'm sure one of the first concerns and questions is, how can I catch this early? What can I look out for? So I just wanted to take this opportunity to spread a bit of awareness about kidney cancer, because it is not one of the major cancers. It is a more rare type of cancer. It makes up about 3 to 4% of all cancer cases in the US. So it's not a super common type of cancer, and it was pretty random that Justin ended up with this cancer as well, considering there was no other incidence of kidney cancer in his family. So kidney cancer is called renal cell carcinoma. It falls into 2 different categories. There's clear cell renal cell carcinoma and there's non-clear cell renal cell carcinoma. The clear cell looks clear under a microscope. Those cells look clear under a microscope for that type of cancer. And the non-clear cell shows up not clear under a microscope. And there are subcategories of different appearances that those non-clear cells show up under a microscope as opposed to looking clear or translucent like the clear cell. So clear cell renal cell carcinoma is the more common type of renal cell carcinoma. The clear type accounts for about 80% of the cases, 75 to 80%. And the non-clear cell accounts for about 20 to 25%. So majority of people fall under the clear cell category. Justin fell under the non-clear cell. So he had non-clear cell renal cell carcinoma. Beneath that non-clear cell category, like I mentioned, there are other types of subcategories of that tumor type. The full name of what he had was non-clear renal cell carcinoma with rhabdoid features. That rhabdoid features thing, that is the type of mutation for his tumor type that he had. So there's only about, I think I read 2 to 7% of non-clear cell renal cell carcinoma cases that exist. So it was a very small percentage of that general cancer. The kidney cancer makes up only about 3 to 4% of all cancer cases. Beneath that, he's also in the category of the more rare type of kidney cancer. And beneath that, he also has a very rare and aggressive mutation for his rare tumor type. And so that rhabdoid component even sounds aggressive, doesn't it? When they said that, it's like rabid or something like that. So it is a type of kidney tumor. It is, and I'm reading this off of a quick search. This is from Boston Children's Hospital. It is extremely rare in adults and aggressive cancer characterized by rapid growth and early metastases. It was just a very random, weird thing that he got. It's just one of those mysteries of life. He wasn't necessarily around anything notably environmentally impactful. He didn't have anything particularly bad about his lifestyle that we could really point to. So when I was going down the rabbit hole of revisiting this information, I read that it is extremely rare in adults, and it's actually more common in children. And so let's see, just going to read some things off of this. Let's see, this is from the National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health, National Center for Biotechnology Information, and from PubMed. So this is a study on the epidemiology of renal cell carcinoma. Though renal cell carcinoma, RCC, accounts for 2% of global cancer diagnosis, so 2% of global cancer diagnosis and diagnoses and deaths. 2%. It has more than doubled in incidence in the developed world over the past half century, and today is the 9th most common neoplasm, that's just another word for tumor, in the United States. So while North America and Western Europe have the highest disease burden, other places around the world are projected to see an increase in this incidence as well. So Latin America, Asia, and Africa are the ones listed. So most cases of RCC, renal cell carcinoma, are discovered incidentally on imaging, and survival is highly dependent on the stage at diagnosis, with the metastatic disease having only a 12% 5-year survival rate. So very low chances of survival past 5 years. It says 2/3 of RCC diagnoses are made in men. So 66% of these are diagnosed in men. And it says the average age of diagnosis in the U.S. is 64. Modifiable risk factors for renal cell carcinoma include smoking, obesity, poorly controlled hypertension, diet, and alcohol, and occupational exposures. Prevention strategies aimed at improving survival and reducing disparities, including addressing lifestyle factors and access to regular health care among underserved populations and in developing nations, as well as more rigorous imaging guidelines detect RCC at an earlier stage. Okay, so basically, the main things here is that it's 2% of the global cancers, diagnoses, and death, and it has doubled worldwide over the past half century. It is now the 9th most common neoplasm, which is interesting. It is mostly in men and mostly diagnosed in men, and the most common age, the average age, I should say, is 64, age 64. And the lifestyle components are there, as well as the environmental factor and the genetic predisposition. And it even goes through talking about which DNA gene, which gene is potentially linked to it. Justin never went through that full testing. They wanted to do that genetic testing when we first got to Mayo, and I think they did something. I just remember them reporting that based on some of the genetic tests that they did, it seemed like this was not a cancer that would be passed down to his children, which was, of course, a big concern, especially given his age. But then I remember towards the end, Justin had said we didn't do the full thing and we don't have that conclusively, or something was missing. So I was like, I'm pretty sure I remember the doctor saying that it was not something that would be passed down based on the testing they did on the biopsy from the tumor. So that's a little bit about the type of cancer, and just wanted you to understand the rarity of this type of cancer, especially in adults. And especially in someone like Justin, who was otherwise pretty healthy and doesn't really have any specific environmental factors that would have led to something like this, like how the doctor mentioned the fracking sites. Like, he was in Southern California his entire life. So there wasn't anything in particular like that at play here. So it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of, why did this happen? And he asked himself that all the time. Like, he would say, I'm a good person. Why is this happening to me? I'm at this time in my life, like, I don't feel like I deserve this. And the doctors were like, there's nothing you did to cause this. There is it's unfortunately just genetics at play and bad luck. That's what all the doctors told us. So there's nothing he did to deserve it. Personally, with my spiritual leanings, I question things in a different way, of just like, for whatever reason, this was meant to be part of his journey and meant to be part of our journey. And there are things and mysteries that happen in life that maybe we're not meant to understand right now. And I hold out hope that one day I will understand, but it helps me to accept the realities we're living out. And there was no clear link for what would have caused, especially this particular cancer in him, because his mom has different types of cancer. Her parents had different cancers. So although there is cancer in that line, they all had different types of cancers, and both of her parents, both of Justin's grandparents, had two different bouts of cancer. I guess we can say it like that. Grandma had two different episodes of breast cancer throughout her life, and Grandpa had initially a prostate cancer, and secondarily, the second cancer, and what actually took him was lung cancer. And he was not a smoker. It was his occupational hazards that he was exposed to that could be linked to that lung cancer. So he does have a high incidence of cancer in his family, but none of them are the same. So this one did just come out of nowhere. What I wonder, sometimes I think, like, what are the early signs? So I'll just go backwards a little bit from diagnosis. So we knew that the obvious sign that led us to get the imaging was the peeing blood and then the trunk pain, the flank pain. But prior to that, that same month, so right before we left for Florida for my mom's memorial, we had COVID and we almost didn't get a chance to go to Florida because of the COVID that me, Justin, and our son, who was a little over, he was like 1.5 at the time. We all three got COVID, and we used to be super careful about COVID. We were wearing masks, we were washing our hands constantly. We were very cautious, even then. And I mean, at that point, things had let up quite a bit, but we were very cautious the whole time during COVID until like the mask mandates and everything started coming down. We have no idea how we got COVID, even to this day, because Justin's mom was with us and she's the only one who didn't get COVID. So we don't really understand, but we ended up with COVID. That hit Justin so hard. Of course, our 1.5-year-old was, in rough shape for like one day. I mean, not rough shape, but he was just ill for like one day and then was basically back to normal. Meanwhile, me and Justin, it took longer, but I started recovering pretty quickly. I rarely get sick. I rarely get sick in a way where I have to lay down and not do things. So I was basically, not feeling well for a little while, but pretty much functional, and then started recovering pretty quickly. But Justin, it was drawing out for so long. I thought he was just being a big man baby. I'm like, dude, there's like a million things we need to do around this house right now. Like, let's go, stop whining. Like, you can't still be that sick right now. Well, he was that sick right now. I just didn't know it was because of the cancer. So that explains that. So that could be taken as a sign, like that not being able to recover, again, that weakened immune system. And I wonder if they kind of cause each other, like he might have had a weakened immune system, and then boom, the cancer's doing what it's doing. We have no idea. Then he gets COVID, and it's like the cancer is causing his immune system to be weaker, so he's not recovering as quickly. And it kind of was like the cancer is causing the lower immune system, and the lowered immune system also caused the cancer maybe, and there's kind of this interaction that's making it even worse. Side story, Justin and I had been trying to get me pregnant with our second baby for the previous 10 months. And while we were experiencing our COVID moment, I was religiously tracking my ovulation, using like ovulation test strips. I was using an app. I was doing research. I was breastfeeding still. I breastfed both of my kids for about 2 years. So I was still breastfeeding. That threw things off. And then we had a lot of stressors. So it kind of felt like it was taking longer for a lot of different reasons than it took for our first baby. But we had already been going 10 months at that point. So we had our COVID. I had a sinus infection from the COVID. I'm on antibiotics. We're still in rough shape, but we got the go-ahead to go to Florida. Right a few days before we were going to leave, I told Justin, hey, just so you know, I know you feel like crap right now, but my ovulation strips are the highest I've ever seen it. So if we're going to do it, this would be the day to do it. And he was just like, ugh, no, I can't imagine having to do that right now. But okay, we'll do it. So we did it. And that was the only time we did it that month. And that was when our baby girl came to us. So it was a one time. I know exactly when it happened. And it was a freaking miracle because, like I mentioned before, we went to Florida and found out about his cancer, and that basically would have probably made it impossible for us to get pregnant, like to try to get pregnant anymore. just with all the various challenges that came. And because we got COVID, he missed his scheduled CT scan because eventually his doctor did agree to just let him get this CT scan to just rule things out. That's kind of how the doctor was approaching. He's like, "You're healthy. There's nothing to worry about. Sure, if you're worried, we'll schedule a CT scan and just rule it out, you know." So he was scheduled to do a CT scan in early May of 2022, but we got COVID. And then he couldn't go for his CT scan. If he would have, we would have had to cancel our Florida trip. We might not have gotten pregnant. Like, it's just when things work out in a certain way, it's hard to not think that that's how it was meant to work out, some of those things. Not saying he was meant to get cancer, but I just mean like the way it was working out, where it's like he was finally scheduled for the CT scan. We got COVID randomly and we can't pinpoint how. So he missed the CT scan in that time frame. I'm ovulating in a way that is like the highest numbers on these strips I've ever seen. He manages to, gather up the physical energy needed to do that when you're feeling like absolute crap. The one time we do it is the time that conceived the baby. And we may have never been able to have another baby if we didn't do it right then and there. And that's why I call our second baby, our little girl, like Wonder Woman. Like, I picture her like Wonder Woman in that scene in the first newer one where she's just like in battle. She has that shield and she's like, pew, pew. She's getting rid of all of the bullets coming at her and the bad guys coming at her. And she's just like, she keeps walking forward, and she's strong and she's powerful and nothing is going to stop her. Like, that's how I picture our baby girl's soul coming to us. Like, she was meant to come in that exact moment with that level of strength and fierceness, because she was battling, who knows, like the lethargy of cancer, the COVID. There were so many things against her. There was only one opportunity for her to come that month. It was a miracle. It was just, she was truly meant to come to us in that exact moment. And I just feel like her soul it was just meant to be. It was just meant to be that she came to us right at that exact moment to be with us through that journey. And even though it was a short amount of time she got to be on the earth, and both my kids really only had a short moment in time, just a few years to be on the earth at the same time as their dad. But I just know that it seemed like destiny, the way her soul came and at that exact time. And that's why I called her the light bringer. She was just that light in the darkness. So it's pretty crazy. Okay, so I'm going to keep going backwards in time. So from the diagnosis. And then, like, just to share a little about what our lives kind of looked like right before cancer. So all of that's happening in April. We did the Easter egg hunt at our local community park, which has a huge event in Surprise, Arizona. We were doing that like normal. My birthday is April 9th, and that year I made Justin and my mother-in-law, his mom, and our 1.5-year-old all come with me to celebrate my birthday by going up to Page, Arizona, which has Horseshoe Bend, Marble Canyon, Antelope Canyon, bunch of great hiking up there on the border between Arizona and Utah. So that was the birthday gift I had asked for. So we went up there. We did a bunch of hiking. Justin and I were pretty good hikers, especially Justin. He was a very good hiker. He did a lot of hiking for his job prior to the job he ended with when we were in Arizona. So when he worked in Palm Springs, he was an environmental technician doing a lot of hiking in the backcountry there, monitoring the endangered bighorn sheep population. So he was very active. He was a very good hiker. We had done a couple of backpacking trips in our day. So we were hiking. We did Antelope Canyon, which is not a difficult hike, but you do need to be led down there with a tour guide from the Navajo Nation. So we did that. It was amazing. I highly recommend. We did Antelope Canyon X, which was just as gorgeous as the regular Antelope Canyon, but less popular. So you get more picture time by yourself in the canyons, in the slot canyons. We didn't get in for Marble Canyon. That was like a 6-mile hike. So we weren't quite up for that with our 1.5-year-old because he was a big boy and we would have had to carry him the whole time. But we did a really cool hike called the Hoodoos. So we were hiking just that month prior. So even though Justin had some of that a little bit of back pain, he was mostly normal. He was still hiking. He was carrying our son in the hiking backpack thing we had. We were visiting with family. We were celebrating our anniversary in February. We were going up to Flagstaff in January to go sledding. So like those few months right before finding out his cancer, he was just living normal life. We were all living normal life, 2 30-somethings with their baby and just starting off, and that's what was happening. Jump backwards to January of 2022. That's when he was like, yeah, I'm very concerned about this weight loss and also this back pain thing. So those were definitely the 2 biggest concerns that led to really getting checked out more. But again, from January until June, that's when the oncologist at Mayo was really suspecting was the main big growth of the tumor. They said it grew about 1 centimeter a month. So it would have been during that primary time. And then, so through the holidays, that's when he started being like, this is weird. I don't typically lose weight during the holidays. In fact, I usually gain weight during the holidays. That was a big concern for him. Backtrack a couple months before that, it would have been October of 2021. He had this back pain that started up. That was the first time he started having the back pain. Again, he brought this concern to his primary care physician, and he said that it's probably just that you're sitting more down in a chair. This is like a new job for you. You were out in the field more. So it's probably just that, you're getting in your 30s and, your body's changing a little bit and you're going to have more aches and pains. So it's probably just that, because it would come and go. So it wasn't like super noticeable as an ongoing concern. And then the only other factor I would say that he started to wonder if that was actually his first symptom was he had this extreme fatigue start up the year before in the summer. He thought it was valley fever, but he never got checked for it. And so we don't know if that was actually, if this type of cancer could grow like that a year in advance or start up. Maybe it was like a very early sign or symptom, So those would be the main ones. Whenever people are like, was there any signs beforehand? I would say it was the weight loss for sure, the flank pain, and the fatigue. Those 3 things were the biggest early signs. And I will just say that those persisted the entirety through his battle. So those didn't ever go away. Once that started up, that was his life. The rest of his life experience was those 3 consistent things, and also a lot of GI issues, gastrointestinal issues. Besides those things, I have some additional theories of just early signs. And maybe it's not as much signs or symptoms as it is just kind of like maybe these things set the stage for cancer to more successfully occur. But I kind of wonder, because of Justin's familial presence of cancer and that being potentially a factor in his genetics that caused him to be predisposed to a cancer, I wonder if when he started up with his panic attacks, if that has some relation in some way. So I started looking into if that could even be possible. Oh, and before I dive into this, the other thing that he had was when we were in LA, we were living in LA from 2009 until 2013. At first, we were just living separately as friends. After we got together as a couple in 2011, we moved in together and we were living in Sherman Oaks. So when we were in Sherman Oaks, he got shingles. He had developed shingles, which was super weird because he was 28 years old at the time and otherwise very healthy. He was going through some stress because he couldn't find a job after being laid off. But other than that, he was, doing pretty well and he was fine. But then he developed shingles, which everyone was like, what? How old is he? And it's like 28. They're like, that's weird. It's usually like an older person thing. So it made me think, I wonder if like his immune system was, weakened at the time. That's just one small thing, small factor. The panic attacks are really where I was wondering, because it's like, well, can panic disorder affect your immune system? So when I started looking into it, basically it was like panic. We can think of like panic and generalized anxiety disorders as being some type of stress, right? It kind of falls under, it's different, of course, because it's a whole thing on its own and it's very well defined, but it's kind of a type of stress on your body, right? Because you're in fight or flight when you're having these anxiety attacks, or you're experiencing anxiety, you're experiencing panic, because your body is perceiving a threat and your body is telling you you are in fight or flight mode right now. So I wondered, and I looked into it, and basically I found that yes, generalized anxiety disorder, there was a study that I read on here that that showed that people with generalized anxiety disorder do have an increased risk of cancer. So it made me think, why would that be? What exactly about that would cause that? So then I looked into, can stress cause cancer? And basically what I found is that there's a lot of studies that do seem to link stress to cancer. And then there's some studies that it comes out inconclusive. So we do need a lot more research about how chronic stress can affect cancer, and even like what chronic stress is, because I think most of us are used to living under chronic stress conditions just because of the world we live in. And maybe that's part of why these rates of this particular cancer, and probably all cancers, but this particular cancer has doubled in the past, what did it say, half century? So, or, in the past 50 years. So, yes, I found that there seems to be a connection between stress and cancer. It's not always conclusive, but other things, such as what behaviors stress may cause us to do, that might have a link to cancer, such as a more indirect link to cancer, like smoking. If you're stressed and you use smoking tobacco as a form of stress relief, that can lead to cancer. And we know there is a direct link with smoking, tobacco and specifically nicotine products, to cancer. So we know those are related. But what about just stress? Then I thought, can stress affect your immune system? I bet it does. So of course I look into that, and yes, the answer is basically yes. It is known that stress can affect your immune system. So then I wanted to just see, so why does stress, like what happens when we're stressed, right? We're releasing stress hormones, cortisol, things like that. And can those things cause things that create an environment where cancer can thrive? So I looked it up, and yes, cortisol and other stress hormones can have an oxidizing effects. If you know about antioxidants, we know that we want more antioxidants because that helps with a lot of different things, including lowering our risk of cancer, because that oxidizing that's happening is part of what we don't want to happen in our body. So oxidants help fight the oxidizing effect, the oxidizing stress. So then I found this from, and if you know what free radicals are basically they're generated. Well, what I looked up, it said excess cortisol can lead to the generation of free radicals, which can damage cells and contribute to aging and various health issues. And part of those health issues are cancer. And that came from the National Institutes of Health as well, that little bit of information. Then I found this from MD Anderson, which, if you're not familiar, MD Anderson is the place everybody wants to go for their cancer treatment if you can, especially for the rare stuff. It says, how do free radicals affect the body? High levels of free radicals can harm the body by causing oxidative stress. This oxidative stress can damage cell membranes, proteins, lipids, and DNA. When these structures are damaged, harmful compounds are formed, resulting in the disruption of cellular functions and even cell death. So, and it says oxidative stress can significantly contribute to a variety of ailments, and in that list is cancer. So I wonder, there is no way to really find this out at this point, but it would make sense to me that if someone is genetically predisposed to cancer already, maybe he had that gene that switches on the cancer mutations, or makes way for your body to already be susceptible to cell mutations that may lead to cancer. So you have that going already. Now you have this newly developed panic disorder along with depression that he's now battling for those years leading up to basically this cancer diagnosis. So, you have like 5 to 7 years of solid panic attacks and stress where your body literally thinks it's dying. I wonder what effect that had. I wonder if that created this environment to allow that cancer to proliferate. We'll never know. I'll never know that. But it's definitely something I wonder about. I wonder if it's connected. And yes, it seems like he did have some of those early signs at that point, in the, let's say, 6 to 8 months leading up to when it became unavoidably obvious that something was not right when he peed blood. So yeah, it's definitely interesting and something to think about. And I think from my years in health coaching, I've worked with a lot of people on stress management and emotional health and wellness, not from a counseling perspective, more from a health coaching perspective. And thankfully, most of the people I've worked with and most of the people nowadays seem to know that stress is a major problem and it's something worth spending time on. However, whenever I would have new intakes, I would do an intake with a person who's just starting up health coaching. I always would include parts of the some of the questions that I liked to ask in the beginning were around different lifestyle habits and behaviors. I would get an idea of what are you eating? What does a typical day look like? What is your movement? What kind of movements do you prefer and have you done? What is your stress like right now? What is the level of stress and how well do you manage it? I would say most people would say they were under a high level of stress and not managing well. So that is society right now. Sometimes I think it's easy to discount that because we're so used to living in this chronic stress bubble society that we're living in. But we all know it's something that's definitely worthwhile to work on. So I think that's a good place to stop off. And I want to just end this episode, of course, with gratitude. And if you didn't know, gratitude is one of the things, a gratitude practice is one of the things that can combat chronic stress and also depression and other mental health issues. So gratitude is a super potent, powerful approach and tool to use for overall quality of life improvements. So I'm going to end this episode with my gratitude practice, and I encourage you all to join me and do the same. And I really emphasize the word practice because sometimes gratitude doesn't come naturally or easily, especially when we're in the deep darkness. And it really is something you have to actively pursue and maybe spell out literally on paper in a journal for you to get into this habit and for your mind to become a mind that notices things to be grateful for, and that just helps to kind of balance the scales. Does it solve all of your problems just to be grateful? No, of course not. It is just one tool that can help with overall wellness, including mental health wellness. So I'm going to end this by saying thank you to all of you who have listened to my first episode, who know me and who have shared your thoughts, your feedback, your encouragement. It has meant a lot to me, and I found it extremely helpful. So I'm just very, very grateful for the people who have been part of my council, my village, before I moved here to my new place of Portland, Oregon, and all of the new friends that I have made and the community that we're building here, and people who are just getting to know me but still supporting me and so positive and kind, and again all of my people who have been with me for many years now or who've known me through all of my different phases, known me and Justin through all these different phases. I just want to express I have so much love and gratitude for my chosen family. So thank you all, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Adios.